This is episode 10 of DNA of Games, a series highlighting the disabled and neurodiverse talent in the game industry. I'm your host, Chris, and this podcast was created to chat to other disabled and neurodiverse people working within the games industry. I'm excited each time to meet people like myself and discuss normalised disability and neurodiversity within the industry. I hope this podcast helps you see the identities often left out of the discussion when it comes to representation, and I hope it encourages others like ourselves to break into games. Joining me this week is Maxi, the creator of the Hayseed Knight and fellow developer as part of the Payload Studios incubator space Tentacle Zone. The Hayseed Knight is available on Steam now, links in the description. Hello and welcome to another episode of DNA of Games, the podcast which talks to disabled and neurodiverse people that work in the industry. And joining me today, I'm quite excited because it's a fellow Tentacle Zone cohort participant, game developer extraordinaire, translator / localization expert, and also I was going to say vocal coach, but it's not singing. I mean a confidence coach, that's the word I'm looking for, of Maxi. So thank you for joining us. I don't know if you want to give yourself a little intro.
Thank you so much for having me, first of all. And well, I have this thing I always do, which is kind of like, hey everyone, my name is Maxi, Molina, or Sandra MJ. I'm a voice director, art director, creative director, basically whatever you pay me for. And yeah, I've been in the games industry for 5 years now. Before that, I was in the comics industry, working for a few different companies, such as DC Comics, Blizzard, Dark Horse, a bunch of places. Nowadays, I'm most well recognized for my own game, which is the Hayseed Knight, in which I do everything except the music. It's a lot of things. But no, it's my free time. I give myself more work for my free time.
Yeah, I think we're both in the similar personalities where we like to keep busy, like to keep with the work. We're like, any project, like, yeah, we'll take that on, we'll do that, we'll do this. But yeah, I guess predominantly right now, do you feel yourself as a game developer then, given that obviously you're working really hard on the Hayseed Knight, available on Steam?
Yeah, I quit comics, and I've been only doing game development since, because I hurt my wrist a few years ago, so I had to be like, okay, I need a new career. I'm going to make a game, and it worked out somehow.
Like, make a game, that'll be easy, I'll just do that. But yeah, I guess people will be really interested to know, like, kind of the type of game developer you are. Hayseed Knight is a visual novel. Obviously, with you get to follow an exciting story that you yourself have created, correct?
Yes.
This is where you've literally done so many like bits in Hayseed Knight that it's like, you've just done it all, basically.
Yeah, so see, I wanted to make cartoons, but I don't have the money or the skills to make cartoons. So I was like, yes, next best thing, visual novel. Yeah, let's do that. So I learned how to program a visual novel instead of, doing animation or any of the other things I was going for. So yeah, it's kind of like a pantomime, like a puppetry show, where it's like, yeah, I'm just going to make the sprites go from side to side, jump around. It's cute. People love that.
I think my favourite clip that you kind of shared with the group was when one of the characters was like, "Oh, you're gonna like cartwheel or spin," and it's just like a stupid little like spinning like thing. It's like, oh god, that happened our moment definitely. Just like, how can we animate a cartwheel? Spin.
That one came from like a moment where I was like, well, the character had to be thinking, right? Like, oh, and I was like, I miscalculated, and it kind of like whoop spin, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to keep it. I like that, so just put Adam shit on it. That's funnier.
Yeah, it must be interesting for yourself, becoming like the fully fledged game developer, to think quite creatively around, like, like, how can I do this? How can I represent this? Because everybody doesn't have the time just to be the most world's brilliant animator, or be able to do this and that, because it's quite hard to be a jack of all trades, really. But it must be quite interesting for yourself to be like, how can I represent this in the story that I want to do? Like, like the cartwheel.
Definitely. Like for an action scene, for example, in a visual novel, it's very hard to show anything, because it's like, yes, I could go full novel here and just explain to you the fight, but you are there like, I don't want to read, I want to see the pretty images. So now I have to do a bunch of images, and it's like, okay, do I go like a comic? Do I go like animate this? What do I do? So there's a few issues in translating, just how much effort do you put into any scene, because it's not quite a novel and it's not quite animated. So sometimes there's a bit of an awkward mix there, but it works out somehow.
Definitely. With this podcast, obviously it's all about talking to people similar to ourselves. I don't know whether you're quite happy to share like how you identify in terms of neurodiversity and disability.
Yes, absolutely. I'm autistic. I have OCD, and among other things, I've struggled in my life with depression, PTSD, and just it's not very clear if I have ADHD or bipolar syndrome. It's not super clear.
Yeah, a lot of things are very hard to actually define, especially neurodiversity. It's not a on-off switch. It's not a this-that sort of thing. Where talking to other guests and everybody, it's nice to see that everybody's kind of like finding where they feel that they fit and where's the best way for them to fit in to get whatever support they need.
Yeah, I mean, for me, for example, OCD, I never knew what it was until it was explained to me in therapy. When I was explaining my issues to my therapist, and she was like, well, you know what, it sounds like you have a very bad case of OCD. And I was like, a what? It's like, you always see it on TV represented as, like someone washing their hands 80 times or doing a rhythm and stuff like that. And it's not that. That's not what OCD is. So it was very surprising to me just to learn how badly it's represented. It's been it's not like that for everyone. Some people do have that kind of pattern, but it's just kind of like a mental loop you put yourself into, and then you have to do something to make the anxiety go away, right? So imagine you were scared of crossing the street, and then you had to look left and right like X number of times until you feel like, okay, cool, it's magically gone away. I'm not going to get run over because I've done this thing, right? So that's kind of like that.
Yeah, it's interesting to speak about OCD. I think you're right. I think people will have that stereotypical view of what OCD is, like that sort of manic cleaning. I think there's where a lot of people would think OCD is. But it's nice that you're sort of explaining that, like sort of it's like a loop of patterns essentially, which I really like that idea.
It was really good to get some. I got some migraine medication that happened to have effects over OCD as well, and suddenly I kind of like devolved into Excel sheets. I was like, oh, I need to put everything on Excel now. Oh, I need to Excels all over the place. Like I had 3 months of like Excel sheets obsessively. just from how it was interacting with my OCD. It was super interesting going through that, because I had never opened an Excel tab in my life.
Thanks for sharing that. Just to sort of bring it back into a career focus, and how you journeyed towards creating a Hayseed Knight. You said briefly that you worked in comics before. Was that always? I feel like you were always a creative person, but it's kind of like was that something from school that you were like, oh, I'm obsessed with comics. This is something I'm really going to be in.
No, I actually always sucked at art. Like I always failed at art.
Wow.
Like to the degree I always wanted to be an artist. I never knew what an artist was, but I wanted to be an artist. If you ask me as a kid, what do you want to be? I was like, I want to be an artist, and but I was bad to the degree. My mom came to my art teacher in school, and she was like, does my child have any talent? And the art teacher was like, no. And I was like, you what? I'm going to show you all. I'm going to bore you all. It's practice until I was any good at it. And I started working at 17 in comics.
So what did you do there? Were you an artist or a writer? Or
I was a colorist. That's the thing. I colored comics. It wasn't a thing I knew existed, but when I was like 15 years old, a comic editor came to my town, and I showed him my 15-year-old portfolio, like, oh my God, look at this thing. And he flicked the pages, and he was like, well, you're not a great artist, but your colors are pretty nice. And I was like, that's a thing? My colors? Me, who has never been able to like color inside the lines or anything. And 2 years later, I was working in Game of Thrones. So
yeah, like that's interesting. Like because it's refreshing to hear like an artist be like, oh yeah, I was like crap at the start.
I've always thought that talent is just the ability to learn faster. Like most things you do in your life, you will be crap at them, and that's okay. That's how we learn. We start being crap, and then we get better.
No, that's so true. It's weird because like I think I've seen so many artists that I know that make it a career goal, or they are in their career, tend to be the people that were like, oh, I've always had an artistic, skill. Like at school, I was always like, one of the best artists in the class, sort of thing. And then she comes stomping through the door. Yeah, that's the shit one.
No, I was the geek with all with the best marks and everything. So everyone was like, "Oh, you're going to go on to study physics or something," and I didn't even go to college. I never got anything past high school. So
wow, like was that just because you landed yourself in a job that you really loved, or was it a case of just like, I'm done with education?
Part of that was that. Other part, I hated school. I hated studying. Like, I suffered so much through going to school and having to stay there. Like, just sitting there watching the things happen. That I got agoraphobia once high school was over, right? And I got so overwhelmed by the fear of like, I can't even leave my home. That I just spent several months without leaving my room.
Wow.
But in that time, I made good use of that time, and I got another portfolio. So that's silver linings,
And obviously, when you were younger, did you have a diagnosis of like OCD and autism, or was that something that you just recently got a diagnosis of?
Mental health was a huge taboo in my family, and in my town in general. It's a very kind of like out in the middle of nowhere town. And so I was never taken to a psychologist or therapist as a kid. I was taken once for like IQ testing, right? And it's very telling that my mother was so afraid that like she was convinced that I will be how can I say this in a nice way? She didn't think I was very smart for how smart I was, if you catch my drift. So yeah, like I didn't get proper therapy until I was in my 20s, which is when I actually got to go there on my own with my own money and learn a lot about myself.
Yeah, it's how does your mother sort of how did she sort of react to having that sort of formal diagnosis? She's like, yeah, makes sense now.
She's very much like family again, very taboo. So they'll say things like, they're the kind of people to throw in your face something like, "Oh, you are crazy" and stuff like that, So that's the thing, right? It's been a challenge to make her understand that I have special needs.
Yeah.
But little by little, she has come around to that, which is the important part. I feel, because when I look at her, for example, she shows signs of having similar things to me as an OCD and stuff like that, right? But she's like, oh no, I would not go to therapy. No, like, oh no, or that's very like that.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. And yeah, like it's kind of like I guess it's nicer that now you're gaining more knowledge on it, and you can actually share that with your mum, with your family, and yeah, it might take a little bit of time for them to get on the same page, but at least you like, hey, at least they're trying, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's I think that it's important to understand how much energy you have in your life to deal with this sort of stuff, right? And this and make a decision as an adult to be like, okay, do I want to deal with this, or do I can put some space here, or I can be like, okay, no, I want to spend this time to make them understand,
Yeah.
right? That's important. You have agency as an adult to be like, okay, what do I want to do with my time on this earth,
Yeah, yeah. Was it interesting for yourself to sort of get that no notice and go, oh, that actually makes sense now for who I am and how I am, like, whether that's working or how I was in school?
Yeah, I always struggle a lot with like monster complexes. Be like, oh, I have to be broken somehow. I don't understand people. There's something broken with me, right? And just learning about like, hey, no, you're just a normal human. Your brain just works a little different. That was really, really like, it helped me so much. I spoke with another friend who was like he was very disappointed by his autism diagnostic. So he got it in his teens, right? And he felt really bad. But for me, it was like, oh, okay. So when I suddenly explode, that's not because I have lost my mind. I'm having a meltdown. Okay, very good. Now I know that I used to have to walk away from the stress. Very good, very nice. That's the kind of things where I didn't have words to name the things that were happening to me that were normal in my life, but so out of the way for other people, right?
Definitely. That's interesting, and I think that's great that you're so willing to sort of share your story as well to help other people that might be sort of in the same boat or like having the similar feelings, like, and to get that sort of affirmation, like, hey, actually, Maxi sort of has dealt with this sort of thing, and has the same sort of things maybe I can identify with. Like, well, this makes sense to me. Like, it might help me now. Just to pursue this sort of therapy or whatever I need.
Yeah, because some people are lucky that their families do have some notions of mental health, right?
Yeah.
And they can be like, okay, cool. There's something going on with you. Let's take you to the therapist and figure out what's going on, rather than be like, oh, you're a bad kid. Like, oh, you're bad. So stop being bad, right? I'm pretty fantastic at masking. Most people wouldn't guess I am neurodiverse in normal conversation, right? Because I had to go to a lot of such lengths during my childhood to mask, because I was, instead of being helped, I was punished.
Yeah.
The thing about masking is it is very stressing. I am not being myself in most conversations. I am being the version of myself that I think people want me to be, right?
Yeah.
So learning to put down the mask is work on its own.
Yeah. Do you feel like that you changed your approach to how you work at life now, like in terms of like at work, because obviously you started as like the colorist, with the comics quite early in life, really, but getting that diagnosis and actually reapproaching work, was it different for you in the workplace after the diagnosis, or was it kind of like just the same?
Well, I got my diagnostics after diagnosis after I had already quit comics. So it did help for video games, right? Because I figured out pretty early, like, oh, so about art, right? I spent so many years trying to prove that I could do art that I never stopped to think, do I like art? Turns out I don't. I do not like working in art. So just even realizing that, like, okay, how many spoons do I have for any of this? I realized that, like, no, I don't want to keep suffering to make art, but I have skills that let me work directing others and helping others do their best.
Yeah.
Right. So I know, for example, that I don't do great with meetings, right? I can show up for a meeting, but if you expecting me to do a stand up every day, where are like, okay, how's the weather? I'll be like, goodbye, right?
Leave meeting.
Exactly. So it's very much like knowing that about myself. I can explain the situation to the people I work with and be like, this is not about you. This is not that I don't like you. It's just this. There's this thing going on where I will get stressed out
Yeah.
if I have to do the X, Y, Z, right?
Yeah.
And knowing how to communicate that instead of one day blowing up and I don't even understand why. That helps in your life, you know.
No, that's so true.
It's interesting because, like, you know, it's weird for you know, to me, to imagine you sort of like masking or like, you know, having like anxiety around, like, you know, whether that's speaking or in running meetings, because from what I know of you, you're very outspoken, you're very like confident in yourself, and yeah, you obviously, like I said, mentioned earlier the podcast, that you know you are I guess like a confidence coach. You help people with public speaking. Which I don't think a lot of people would say. You know, a lot of people would naturally not assume like an autistic person could do that. Like they would say, well, somebody who's autistic to do public speaking, what? Because there's that stereotypes go in their head. You know, how did you come into that element of yourself?
You know, I had depression. Well, I still have depression. I struggled with depression a lot for like most of my life. I wasn't able to show emotion. Like the me you know now, if you'd met me like 5 years ago, you would not recognize me, right?
Wow.
So yeah, I always struggle with emotion and stuff like that. So when I was a kid, I learned to show emotions from watching cartoons, right? So I will imitate them and be like, very big, very everything, right? And when I went to therapy for depression, I learned that, you know, like my therapist will ask me, how confident do you think you should be out of 10, right? And I was like, oh, you know, 7, I would like to be 7 maybe. And she was like, no, the right answer is 10 out of 10 every time. There's no such thing as overconfidence, only compensating for not having enough. And that really changed my mind. I thought, you know, like, I am going to do my best, because being confident is not something you're born with. I mean, I don't think most people are born being confident. It's an exercise. Every day of your life, you get up and tell yourself, I can do this, right? And being confident is when you feel, I cannot do this, I am scared, choosing to do the thing all the same. That is what being confident is for me.
Yeah.
When yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Like, you know, it's one of those things where you hear it, you're just like, that makes so much sense.
So yeah, you know, I take a deep breath and I go for it. Whatever it is, if I'm out of my depth, well, I will swim a little, you know, like I'm not going to drown no matter what happens. I may feel a little bit like, I want the earth to swallow me, but I know that's just stress talking. I know that I will survive no matter what. This too shall pass, you know? So yeah.
Yeah, you know, and if you could give a
top tip or a bit of advice for other neurodiverse people that might be, you know, I guess managing their confidence, what would you say?
I always say, no matter what you do, people have seen weirder. You are not the weirdest thing people have seen in their lives, you know? They will forget. Maybe if you do a fox pass, I think I said that wrong. Faux pass. There we go. If you do a faux pass, that's fine. Like, I can assure you, but no matter what you do, people have seen weirder. Like, you will survive. They will survive. It's okay.
Yeah.
Get up and try again.
No, that's good. You know, that's the thing. You know,
just a day, tomorrow is always sort of going to be there and that, and it's like no matter how weird you think you felt, like whether you've gone into a meeting or done something and you just thought, oh god, they're gonna think I'm gonna be that person that they'll refer to others. It's just, yeah, you're right. It's just there'll probably be somebody else, like, or a situation that's gonna be weirder for people to, actually be.
It's important to know, like we think of ourselves way more than people think of us. Like we are all dealing with our lives, thinking about our own stuff, and like if someone expresses a thought for you, that's actually good. Like they're taking time from their life to think about you, even if it's something funny. Like so yeah, like no one's looking at you as close as you are looking at you.
Like, are we all the main character in our stories? But yeah, I just, I guess like, let's just sort of that transition from working in comics to where you are now as your own solo developer, effectively. But like, how did that first step into the games industry go? Like, kind of what was the turning point for you?
Well, it had to be very sudden, right? Because I messed up my wrist when I was 21. Like, that was 2017. And I had to quit comics effectively because I was like, oh, crap, I can't do art anymore. I can do art, just not on the deadlines that DC Comics, for example, has, right?
Yeah.
So I had no contacts in the industry whatsoever. And I just started making my game and being like, look, I make a game. Hey, I make a game. Do you want to check out my game? And somehow that granted me enough street cred to start getting hired as a voice director and art director for other projects. And that's how I started. I just made something that I liked. For example, I didn't want to be a voice director. That's not something I went for. Thing is that I tried to hire someone to be the voice director of my game. And I jump into the car like, oh my God, what's going on? And this person is being a complete trashbag to the voice actors. And I was like, never mind, I'll do it myself. And it went well. And from the quality of that, I got hired for other projects. And that's how it went for me, just wanting to do my best and being nice to people. Sometimes it's enough to make a career.
But no, it's great. And, that's kind of like, a top tip for people that maybe want to sort of break into the industry or want to do things with games. It's just sort of just make a game.
Make a game, be yourself, be nice.
That's it. It's just 1 out of 3 will do. But yeah, no, it's great that you kind of had that drive to just go ahead and do it, because I think a lot of people struggle to actually get that first game out there sometimes, or just to start doing things.
To be fair, if I had to give an advice, don't spend 6 years making your first game. That is don't do what I did. Like the traditional make small games, learn to be better. That's very good advice. You don't have to deal with the code you wrote 6 years ago before you do that.
Yeah, no, that's kind of a thing. Always start small, because if you get one thing out the door, then you're already going.
Yeah, like this industry is very much about how many games have you shipped, huh? How many projects have you shipped? they would batter you with that one question.
Yeah. I go, all my games have been cancelled.
That hurts every time. I have one bit of advice too. That it's like, never write aspiring in your bio. No matter where you are, the moment you decide to be a game designer, congratulations, you're a game designer now.
Yes, yeah. Like I try to advocate a lot of disabled and neurodiverse people that are interested in accessibility. Like, not sort of be like, oh, I'm aspiring accessibility consultant. Like, you are an accessibility consultant. The minute you start wanting to do it, then why aren't you not?
Exactly. I've I've had I had long arguments with people who were like, no, everyone calls themselves a whatever nowadays. It's like, so what? Where is the problem? Like they are the person who have to show that they can do this, right? So what is the problem? Are you afraid that you're going to make a mistake and hire someone who can't do it? That's a problem on your part for not being, for not having them show you what they could do. Like, okay. Like it's part of a bigger, like, oh no, what if I give opportunities to people? Oh, that's so people are very like that.
But yeah, it's like yeah, you're right. It's that sort of element of imposter syndrome or whatever you would call it. But yeah, it's almost like an element of fake it till you make it sort of in there.
Like that's the basis of confidence. Confidence is very much fake it till you make it. Fake it until one day it becomes natural. And that's exactly it. Like the exercise itself, right? For me, it started being like look in the mirror and tell yourself 5 nice things about yourself. And
5? That's too many.
yeah, that was me every time. I was like, but they all feel like lies. No, I don't like this. I can't do this. And as I went through it, it became natural. I became very fast at doing it. I became very good. I started believing what I was saying, because it's so important to challenge the little voice in your head goes, you're not worth it, you're not enough, you're not whatever, right?
Yeah.
If you let it be, it will keep saying that. And it's not your voice. It's the voices of all the abuse you've received in your life. It's the voices of people who have put you down. You're just repeating it to yourself because our brains are like that. But it's important to challenge that. You don't have to believe it. You are enough. Like, anytime I'm afraid of talking to someone, because I'm like, oh my God, this person is the X person, right? I think of it this way. This person came from the same place as I did, and it's going to the same place as I'm going, right? Like we are going to end up in the same place. That the way I think of it is, we all have the same value. Yeah. No one is better than anyone. No one is worth more points than anyone. Yeah. So I'm just going to do the thing. I'm just going to say, hi, how are you doing? I am Maxi. Hello.
Here's my game. Please buy it.
It's my thing. Give me money.
And, just to sort of top it off of, being a neurodiverse person, as in autistic, how do you apply that to your games that you make now? Basically using it to your advantage?
Mm-hmm. There's definitely, for me, people say things like, oh, the representation in your game is so good. And I'm like, thank you. I'm just writing myself. I'm just writing people like me. Whether it's being trans or being neurodiverse, I think it's so important to not wonder what people want to see. Like, do you want to put more of yourself in the world? Cool. You can write. You can draw. You can show who you are through so many artistic venues without having to be like, oh, but will people relate to this? Yeah, there's a market for everything. Like, there are so many people out there who can understand what you're going for. I think, for me, for example, one of my characters is nonverbal, right? Like me, you can tell right now, but when I'm stressed out, I become unable to communicate whatsoever. Like, there's no speech. So I wrote a choice where there's a question, right? Like, it's between what's wrong and are you scared, right? And people always get it wrong. People always ask what's wrong because they think that's what you would ask someone. But this person can't speak. So if you ask an open question, this person cannot tell you anything, right?
Yeah.
And I saw one streamer get to the question, and she immediately was like, oh, it's a yes or no question. God, I understand this because I was nonverbal as a child, and I went through all this, and I was like, that's the moment of like someone understands the purpose and someone understands what's going on. Even if it's just one person and a bunch of people who have played and gotten this wrong, the fact that someone could relate so strongly, it makes.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the important thing. We need neurodiverse people like yourself to authentically write those types of characters, because that's the players that themselves are neurodiverse will just get it more. Like, it doesn't become this weird stereotype, like written for rather than written with sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, that's great.
No.
Oh, I like that story. That's a nice one.
Yeah, I always think of it this way. Do you know the thing about ice cream? It's like imagine you invite 20 people for ice cream. They are going to get free ice cream if they can agree on one flavor, right? Most people will choose chocolate or vanilla because those are very mild flavors that most people like, so they can agree on that.
Yeah.
The thing about that is, like people who want peppermint, for example. I don't like peppermint, but for example, peppermint, no one's going to go for that because it has so much flavor. Some people will love it and some people will hate it, right? If you make your story have a lot of flavor, it's normal that some people won't like it, but you're not thinking of them. You're thinking of people who, like yourself, will love it,
Oh. Yeah, no, that's good. But, and that's kind of, in a weird way, a good cap off for your, like, actually advice on game development. So, but yeah, like, just moving to our last section of the podcast, which is all about gaming. Yay, we love games. But yeah,
games.
like, so this is all about, like, just wanting to know more about, if I asked you, say, the gaming moment that you always think of when someone said, hey, what are you thinking about games? You always go, oh, yes, this is like, what I think of my favourite thing, is the one thing that wowed me the most. It could be related to accessibility or not. It could be just story. It's up to you.
I have had like so many of those in my life that I struggle to think of one.
Well, that's the true answer from everybody. That everybody goes,
yeah.
There's so many.
I actually never remember them. So what I do is when I have them, right as I'm having them, I write a note because I will forget that. I have the revelation in my head, like, oh yeah, an epiphany. Oh my god, everything makes sense in my life now just from playing this. But I will forget in 5 minutes. So what I do is I write a note. I write a note like whatever.
Yeah.
I will forget it's from the game. I will forget where the heck I got that. But I wrote the note because note will stay with me. And one day I will stumble upon it and be like, oh yeah, that's right. The answer is 42. I don't know.
It's just like, I just image of you just finding random notes around your house, like, eat more bananas.
No, yeah, absolutely. Like I do have some here. Let's see. Wait. Notes I have written. Let's see. Oh, this is from a fighting game. Attack, impact, reaction. It's the reaction to the impact that hurts the audience. Pain humanizes. It's just another obstacle to become. What does it do to you? Anger? Desperation? Forced resourcefulness. There we go. Relentlessness. Well-written pain. Always struggling to win. Always relatable. Fight for fun. Makes difference from other fighters. Act it out with whole body. That's notes.
I just like you leaving like little tidbit reviews for yourself. It's like oh, I felt like this is how I felt. It's like
right? It makes no sense out of them. I have no idea where I got this from, but it's like, yes, important notes from my life.
Have you ever accidentally either rewritten a note or like got like a different reaction from playing the same game?
I lose notes all the time, which is fine because I'm looking forward to rewriting them, right? Because I for some reason, like I grew up with like a very strong memory, but when the first time I was released from depression, my memory just went away. Like, wow, you don't need to remember things anymore. Goodbye. So nowadays, I can play one thing again and again and again, and I don't remember any of it. So I'm having the same experience again, being like, oh my god, that's right. Oh yeah, that's so cool. I don't remember any of this. That's so awesome.
The amount of people like kill for that ability to replay like something for the first time again.
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse because people tell me like, oh yeah, don't you remember this thing we played? And I'm like, no, I don't. I have no idea what you're talking about.
People ask you, oh, have you played this game? Like, think I have. I might not have. No. Yes.
Yeah, like I've probably played. I couldn't tell you what happens in it, but I've played.
Don't ask me anything about the game, but yes, I have played it.
It sounds like an excuse. It sounds like oh yeah, I totally played. No, I just don't remember any of it. You know, like it's true.
Well, oh my, like morbid curiosity. If you can remember, but yeah, because you know, the Hayseed Knight is a visual novel. I'm wondering like what your sort of favorite visual novels are, if you have one.
See, here's the thing: I do not play visual novels.
Oh, controversial.
I have played a few in my life, but I didn't care for them because they were very static, right? I was like, blah 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 blah. Like there was nothing happening. Like they were just talking side to side, and I'm like, I need more in my life. So that's the thing I wanted to change in the Hayseed Knight. It's very animated because it's what grabs my attention, right?
Yeah.
I need puppets jumping up and down the street to be able to read.
Well, that's not it. Because I always thought of myself. I was like, oh, I didn't think I would be, have the appeal to play visual novels. But then someone pointed out, like, oh, I really love playing Persona, and it was like, oh, Persona is basically a visual novel. I was like,
it is.
Oh my god, it technically is.
Yeah, exactly. I also come from Persona, and I love Fire Emblem, so Fire Emblem really enabled me to be like, well, you can make a game that's 90% reading and still make it fun. So that's the thing. However, I can't read for my life. I love reading. I hate the act of reading. It's very frustrating. It's like I love Terry Pratchett, for example, right? You cannot sit me down to read a book for my life, at all.
Do you prefer audiobooks, like?
I can't. No, I also can't because I have an audio processing disorder. That is, I didn't know OSTs existed until I was in my teens because I couldn't hear the music.
Okay.
I focus so hard on dialogue. Like right now, I'm focusing all my attention on you, right, to speak. So if someone was playing music, I would not be able to listen to it. It's just noise, right? So that's the thing. I can't do audiobooks because I have to read along or else I don't know what they're saying.
Yeah, God, no, that's like it's weirdly interesting.
So, that's my game, for example, has full voice acting.
Yeah.
So it's partially it's because of that. If I'm going to read, I get bored, and if there's no audio or anything, I get bored, right? If there was only audio, I'd be like, what are they saying? What's going on? Right? I need subtitles for everything. So that's why for me it's the same experience as watching a cartoon, because it's like there's things happening on the screen, there's people talking, and I have to read the subtitles. So a cartoon, basically.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's doing the Hayseed as a sort of fully voice acted, because that's kind of like in a weird way, you kind of had like you've sort of done like an accessibility like solution by having it like sort of have the voices on there for people. So that's it's quite nice when it's like you have those being very like maybe unintended, but it's kind of like, oh, actually I've actually done some accessibility stuff for my game.
Sometimes by making things for yourself, you're already helping a lot of people like you.
Exactly that, and that's why I'm always advocating for more disabled and neurodiverse people to become developers, game developers, and sort of be involved in making games, because like you say, you end up making games for people like you.
Yeah, that's whenever I play a game that has like the tiniest font, I'm like, oh, no one here struggles reading or has problems with their eyesight or anything.
It's where anyone puts some minuscule subtitles and just bring out binoculars next to them and go, do you think it might be a bit small? You're taking my hint. But yeah, that's coming up to pretty much all we've got time for today, unfortunately, even though I would quite happily chat to you for hours. But yeah, Maxi, creator of Hayseed Knight, again, available on Steam, so yeah, Just go out there, buy the game, everybody.
Get my game. It's very good.
Yeah, it's definitely
I mean,
an enjoyable experience for people, definitely. But if they want to follow you, for example, on social media like Twitter, where's best to find you?
well, you can find me on Twitter at SandraMJDev, and that's it. I'm not anywhere else.
Exclusive. we'll make sure to provide a link in the description for the podcast, either below or wherever in the stratosphere. But yeah, thank you. Honestly, thank you for sharing your time and your story. I'm excited to see the conclusion of the Hayseed Knight, and it's been enjoyable to get to know you in the tentacle zone, and yeah, I'm excited where we go in the future.
Likewise, thank you so much for having me and for doing this podcast for the people. So
For the people.
for the people. I had words that was like people. Yeah, there we go.
But yeah, join us again next time as we'll speak some more new disabled and neurodiverse people working in the games industry. So until then, goodbye.
Bye.
Make sure you follow Maxi and the Hayseed Knight on social media. Details will be in the description. And be sure to follow and subscribe to DNA of Games, available on iTunes, Spotify and YouTube, as well as find us on Twitter under @ManyCatsDIC. Join us again next time.